My name is Gene Taylor, and at 35, I never thought I would have to choose between my parents. When I planned a $35,300 Alaskan adventure for my dad Thomas' 60th birthday, it was supposed to bring us closer. Instead, I heard my mother Karen say the words that changed everything. "You are not invited to your dad's birthday." What she did not know was that I had already discovered her deleted emails and web of lies. Before I dive into how I exposed my mother's manipulation, drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from, and hit subscribe if family drama hits close to home. I grew up in the suburbs of Chicago, in a quiet neighborhood where everyone knew each other. My childhood home was a two-story colonial with blue shutters and a big backyard where Dad taught me how to throw a baseball. We were what people called the perfect American family, at least until I turned 16. That was when my parents' 25-year marriage crumbled before my eyes. The divorce wasn't loud or dramatic like you see in movies. It was quiet, filled with hushed conversations behind closed doors and tension that hung in the air like a heavy fog. My parents told me they had simply grown apart. "Sometimes adults change in different directions," my dad Thomas explained, his eyes looking everywhere but at me. I believed them then. I had no reason not to. After they split, my dad fell into a depression that scared me. He moved into a small apartment across town, and I watched as he became a shell of the man who once coached my little league team and took me camping every summer. His eyes lost their sparkle, and his laughter, once so frequent in our home, became rare. I started visiting him every weekend, determined not to lose him to the darkness that seemed to be consuming him. "I'm fine, Gene, really," he would say, forcing a smile that never reached his eyes. But the empty pizza boxes and unwashed dishes told a different story. So at 16, I became his emotional support. I would clean his apartment while telling him about school, drag him out for walks in the park, and slowly I saw glimpses of my dad returning. Meanwhile, my mother Karen changed too. The divorce transformed her into someone I sometimes didn't recognize. She became more controlling, needing to know every detail of my life and, more concerning, every detail of my time with Dad. "Did your father say anything about me?" she would ask casually as I returned from weekends with him. "Who was at his place? Did he mention dating anyone?" The questions seemed innocent enough at first, but they became a regular interrogation that made me uncomfortable. Mom always needed to be the center of attention at family events. My high school graduation became the Karen show, with her inviting distant relatives I barely knew and organizing an elaborate party that was more about impressing her friends than celebrating my achievement. When I brought home my first serious girlfriend during freshman year of college, Mom dominated the conversation so completely that afterward my girlfriend asked, "Does your mom always talk that much about herself?" Despite the family complications, I focused on building my own life. I studied marketing at Boston University and discovered I had a natural talent for digital campaigns. After graduation, I climbed the corporate ladder quickly, working with major brands and eventually becoming an executive at one of Boston's top marketing firms. The financial freedom my career provided was liberating, allowing me to live comfortably in my downtown apartment and indulge my passion for travel. But the most meaningful use of my success was being able to treat my dad to experiences he would never buy for himself. Our bond strengthened through adult years, especially through our shared love of fishing and Boston Red Sox games. I still remember his face lighting up when I surprised him with front row seats for his 55th birthday. "Gene, you shouldn't have," he protested, but the childlike excitement in his eyes told me everything I needed to know. We established annual birthday traditions, typically weekend trips to coastal Maine where we would rent a cabin, fish during the day, and talk for hours by the fire at night. During these quiet moments, Dad would sometimes open up about his loneliness or his regrets about the divorce, though he always stopped short of saying anything truly negative about my mother. "Your mom is a good person," he would say, staring into the flames. "We just couldn't make it work." I nodded, respecting his dignity even when I suspected there was more to the story. As Dad's 60th birthday approached, I wanted to make it extraordinarily special. 60 was a milestone, and after everything he had done for me, he deserved a celebration that reflected his importance in my life. I started planning 6 months in advance, determined to create a memory that would last him a lifetime. I didn't miss the subtle signs of Mom's jealousy over my relationship with Dad. When I mentioned our annual Maine trips at a family dinner, her smile tightened. "That must be nice," she said, stirring her coffee with unnecessary force. "I can barely get him to return a phone call about fixing the lawnmower he still keeps in my garage." My sister Lisa, 3 years younger than me and always more diplomatic, quickly changed the subject. Later she pulled me aside. "You know how Mom gets about Dad. Maybe don't talk about your trips so much." I shrugged it off. My parents had been divorced for nearly 20 years. Surely any romantic jealousy had faded by now. I understood Mom might feel left out sometimes, but I was in my 30s, and I had the right to have a relationship with my father independent of her feelings. Little did I know, those small moments of tension were warning signs of the storm that was about to hit our family. As I began planning the biggest surprise of Dad's life, I had no idea that my mother's need for control would threaten to destroy not just the celebration, but our entire family dynamic. The idea came to me during one of our weekend fishing trips to Maine. Dad and I were sitting in a small boat on a misty lake at dawn, the world quiet except for the occasional splash of a fish jumping nearby. "You know what I always wanted to do," Dad said, breaking the comfortable silence. "Fish in Alaska. Those wild rivers, the mountains, catching salmon as they swim upstream." His eyes got that faraway look. "My buddy Frank went last year. Said it was like nothing he had ever experienced." That was my light bulb moment. For his 60th birthday, I would give my father the Alaskan wilderness adventure he had always dreamed of but would never buy for himself. Not just a weekend trip, but a full 2-week expedition that would be the vacation of a lifetime. I started researching that very night when we returned to the cabin. Alaska was expensive, but this was a once-in-a-lifetime celebration. I created a detailed budget spreadsheet, allocating $35,300 to make this dream perfect. The breakdown was impressive even to me. $7,000 for a luxury cabin on a private lake for 2 weeks, $5,000 for professional fishing guides who knew exactly where to find the best catches, $8,000 for helicopter tour of Denali and the glaciers, $4,300 for first-class flights, $6,000 for the best gear and clothing needed for Alaskan weather, and $5,000 for meals, local transportation, and unexpected expenses. I spent countless lunch breaks at work researching the best locations. After speaking with several travel specialists, I settled on a remote area near Bristol Bay, known for its incredible salmon runs and breathtaking scenery. The cabin I found was rustic yet comfortable, with large windows overlooking the water and mountains beyond, a stone fireplace, and all the amenities 2 men would need after long days of fishing. "This place books up a year in advance," the rental agent warned me. I paid the $4,000 deposit immediately to secure our spot. Next came the most meaningful part of the planning process: the people. I tracked down 3 of Dad's oldest friends, men he had fished with in his 20s before careers and families had scattered them across the country. I sent emails explaining the surprise, and to my delight, all three agreed to join us for the first week of the trip. Thomas talking about Alaska. That takes me back 30 years, his friend Steve wrote back. Wouldn't miss this for the world. I ordered custom fishing gear with Dad's initials engraved on the handle of a premium rod and reel combination. I found vintage maps of the Alaskan fishing regions and had them framed to give him before our departure. Every detail was considered, right down to the brand of scotch that would be waiting in the cabin. During our regular phone calls, I carefully dropped hints about having something special planned for his birthday. Nothing crazy, I hope, Dad said, but I could hear the pleased curiosity in his voice. Just blocked off 2 weeks in July, I replied casually. Might want to do the same. 2 weeks? Gene, that sounds expensive. Dad, you're turning 60 once. Let me handle it. His excited speculations made me smile, though he never once guessed the true scale of what I was planning. The anticipation of seeing his face when he realized we were headed to Alaska kept me motivated through the complex planning process. About 3 months before the trip, I decided to reach out to my mother. While she wouldn't be joining us in Alaska, I wanted to be transparent about our plans. Mom had occasionally made comments about feeling excluded from big moments, and I thought a heads up would be the respectful thing to do. Wow, Alaska sounds amazing, she said when I called to tell her about the trip. Your father will love that. Her voice sounded genuinely supportive, which relieved me. I was thinking maybe we could do a small family gathering before we leave, I offered. Nothing fancy, just dinner with you, me, Lisa, and Dad. That way, everyone gets to celebrate with him. That's thoughtful of you, Gene. I'd be happy to host at my house. Let me handle that part, and you focus on your big adventure. I agreed, grateful for her positive response and apparent maturity about the situation. It seemed like we were all finally in a healthy place regarding the divorce and our relationships with each other. But a week later, I noticed the first red flag. During a phone call with Dad, he mentioned not receiving an email I'd sent containing links to Alaskan fishing articles. What email? I don't think I got anything from you this week, he said. I brushed it off as a technical glitch. No worries, I'll resend it. How's your new phone working out? Dad had recently upgraded his smartphone, and I assumed he might be having trouble navigating the new technology. Similar incidents happened over the next few weeks. Dad would mention not seeing photos I'd sent of potential fishing spots, or he'd ask questions about trip details I'd already explained in previous emails. Each time, I attributed it to his technological challenges or simple forgetfulness. At 59, Dad wasn't exactly tech-savvy, still printing out emails he wanted to save and calling me whenever he needed to reset a password. In hindsight, I should have recognized these disconnects as symptoms of something more sinister. But who would ever suspect their own mother of systematically intercepting communications between a father and son? The thought was so foreign, so outside the boundaries of normal behavior, that it never crossed my mind. As July approached, I finalized the last details of our Alaskan adventure. I had taken care of everything: fishing licenses, bear safety training registration, Northern Lights viewing tour, and even arranging for a local photographer to document some of our trip. The travel agency sent the final itinerary, a beautiful leather-bound booklet that I planned to present to Dad at the small family gathering Mom was organizing. Everything was set for the surprise of a lifetime. The trip was paid for, the plans were perfect, and I could already imagine the stories we would tell for years to come. All that remained was to reveal the surprise to Dad and then embark on our adventure. I had no idea that my mother had very different plans, or that our family was about to be torn apart by a web of lies so intricate that it would force us all to question everything we thought we knew about each other. The call came on a Tuesday evening, just 10 days before the planned family gathering and 2 weeks before our scheduled departure to Alaska. I was at home reviewing work presentations when my phone lit up with my mother's name. "Jean," she said immediately after I answered, her voice unusually formal. "I need to talk to you about your father's birthday." "Sure," I replied, distracted by the email I was reading. "Everything on track for the dinner at your place next weekend?" There was a pause, then she said the words that stopped me cold. "You're not invited to your dad's birthday." I laughed, thinking she was joking. "Good one, Mom." "I'm serious, Jean. The dinner will be family only." I sat up straight, confusion washing over me. "Mom, I am family. What are you talking about? Your father wants a small, intimate gathering. Just me, him, and Lisa." Her voice had that artificial sweetness that always appeared when she was being manipulative. "He's been feeling neglected by you lately, with how busy you've been." "Neglected?" "Mom, I talk to Dad at least twice a week. We just went fishing last month." She sighed dramatically. "Jean, he doesn't want to make a big deal about it, but he's hurt that you only seem to have time for grand gestures and not regular visits. This birthday is important to him, and he wants it peaceful and small." My mind raced. This made no sense. Dad and I were closer than ever, and he had never once indicated feeling neglected. In fact, he often expressed how much he appreciated our regular calls and visits. "I don't believe that," I said finally. "Let me talk to Dad about this." "He doesn't want to upset you," she countered quickly. "You know how your father avoids conflict. I'm just respecting his wishes and letting you know." After ending the call with my mother, I immediately tried calling my father. The call went straight to voicemail. I tried again, then sent a text. "Dad, call me ASAP. Important." Hours passed with no response, which was unusual for him. I tried again before bed, and again the next morning. Nothing. Finally, around noon the next day, a brief text arrived. "Let's just do what your mother wants this time." The message didn't sound like my father at all. Dad always used proper punctuation in his texts, a habit from his years as a high school English teacher. And he would never dismiss me so abruptly, especially regarding something as significant as his milestone birthday. Something was very wrong, and my marketing executive brain, trained to spot inconsistencies and patterns, went into analytical mode. I recalled the missing emails, the communications that never seemed to reach him, his new confusion about our plans. That evening, I did something I would never normally consider. Years ago, I had helped Dad set up his email account and, with his permission, kept his password information in case he ever got locked out, which happened frequently. We had a mutual understanding about this arrangement, and he had never asked me to delete the information. With growing suspicion, I logged into his email account. What I found confirmed my worst fears and revealed a betrayal so profound that it left me physically sick. In his deleted items folder, I found dozens of emails between us, most of them related to the Alaska trip, all deleted shortly after being received. Someone had been systematically erasing our communications. But that was just the beginning. In his sent items folder, I found emails to me that I had never received, responses to my trip updates expressing excitement and gratitude. These messages had never reached my inbox. Most disturbing of all were emails from my mother to my father that painted a completely different picture of me and my intentions. In these messages, she portrayed me as neglectful, only interested in showing off, with expensive gifts while being absent from his daily life. She had constructed an elaborate narrative about how I was planning the Alaska trip out of guilt and for social media attention, not genuine care. "Gene has been bragging to everyone about this trip," she wrote in one message. "It's more about impressing his colleagues than spending time with you." In another email, she told my father, "I know you're disappointed that Gene hasn't visited in months. The Alaska trip is just his way of compensating without giving actual time and attention." These were blatant lies. I had visited Dad just 3 weeks prior and called him regularly. The Alaska trip was planned based on his own expressed dream, not as some guilt offering. The most shocking discovery came last. My mother had been planning her own surprise for Dad's birthday, a family dinner that she was presenting as entirely his idea and preference. She had manipulated both of us, telling me that Dad wanted me excluded while telling him that I was too busy with work to attend a family celebration. As I stared at the screen, the magnitude of my mother's deception crashed over me. This wasn't a misunderstanding or a simple case of jealousy. This was calculated manipulation designed to drive a wedge between my father and me, all while positioning herself as the supportive, understanding parent. I felt physically ill. My hands shook as I continued to scroll through the evidence of my mother's elaborate deception. The betrayal cut deep, not just because of the current situation, but because it made me question our entire history. How many other times had she manipulated situations, controlled narratives, or created artificial distance between family members? All those years of tension and miscommunication, after the divorce, suddenly appeared in a new light. Dad's depression, his occasional confusion about plans, the strange family dynamics that never quite made sense, they were all potentially connected to this pattern of manipulation. The $35,300 trip, representing months of planning and a genuine desire to give my father a once-in-a-lifetime experience, now hung in the balance. But more importantly, our relationship, the trust and bond we had built, was being deliberately sabotaged by the person who should have been supporting us both. That night, as the evidence of betrayal filled my computer screen, I made a decision. This pattern of manipulation had gone on long enough. The truth needed to come out, no matter how painful the consequences might be for our family. What I didn't realize was just how explosive that truth would prove to be, or how completely it would transform all of our relationships forever. I didn't sleep that night. How could I? My mind raced with the implications of what I had discovered. Every memory from the past 20 years suddenly needed reevaluation. Every misunderstanding, every canceled plan, every confused phone call with my father took on new potential meaning. Had my mother been interfering all along? By dawn, I had moved through shock and hurt to a cold, clear determination. This wasn't just about a ruined birthday surprise or a canceled trip. This was about years of manipulation and the damage it had caused to our family relationships. It needed to stop, and I seemed to be the only one with both the complete picture and the will to act. The ethical dilemma weighed heavily on me. Exposing my mother would cause pain, potentially irreparable damage to our family structure. Was I prepared for those consequences? Could I live with myself if I said nothing and allowed the manipulation to continue? After hours of internal debate, I concluded that truth, however painful, was the only path forward with integrity. My first practical step was dealing with the Alaska trip. I called my travel agent as soon as their office opened. "Gene, canceling 2 weeks before departure means substantial penalties," she warned. "The cabin alone has a non-refundable deposit." "I understand," I replied, my voice hollow from exhaustion. "What's the damage?" The total came to just over $8,000, in non-recoverable deposits. A significant amount, but I considered it a price worth paying to break free from this toxic situation. I authorized the cancellations, feeling a strange mixture of loss and liberation as each reservation was removed. Next came the most important task: creating a comprehensive record of everything I had discovered. As a digital marketing executive, I understood the importance of documentation. I took screenshots of every relevant email, including metadata showing dates and times. I created a timeline of events, correlating my mother's manipulative messages with instances of confusion or missed communication between my father and me. The technical challenge was recovering emails that had been permanently deleted from my father's account. Fortunately, my background in digital marketing had given me contacts in IT security. A college friend who specialized in data recovery talked me through the process of accessing email server backups. It wasn't simple, but by mid-afternoon, I had recovered several crucial emails that revealed the full extent of my mother's interference. The most disturbing discovery came when I found evidence that my mother had been accessing my father's email account for years, not just during the trip planning. She had his password written in a small notebook I found digital photos of when she had asked me to help her organize her cloud storage last year. The notebook was visible in the background of several photos, open to a page with various passwords. I had thought nothing of it at the time. With the evidence compiled, I sat down to write a letter to my father. This wasn't something I could simply text or email, especially knowing my mother might intercept it. The letter took me hours to compose, as I struggled to balance honesty with compassion. "Dad," I wrote, "what I'm about to share will be difficult to read, but I believe you deserve the truth." I detailed everything I had discovered, explaining how I had accessed his email only after becoming suspicious about our missed communications. I included screenshots of key emails, especially the ones where my mother had lied to both of us about the other's feelings and intentions. I explained the Alaska trip in detail, sharing all the plans I had made and the reasons behind them. "This wasn't about showing off or compensating for absence," I wrote. "This was about giving you an experience you've always dreamed of, from a son who values every moment with his father." Finally, I addressed the bigger picture. I don't know how long this manipulation has been happening, but I suspect it may explain many misunderstandings over the years. I'm sharing this not to hurt Mom or force you to choose sides, but because I believe relationships built on lies eventually collapse under their own weight. I printed the letter, along with the most significant evidence, and placed it in a sealed envelope. Then I prepared digital packages for my father, my sister Lisa, and two close family members who had always been part of our support system: my father's brother, Uncle Paul, and my mother's sister, Aunt Rachel. My hand trembled as I prepared to send everything simultaneously. I had chosen my timing carefully. The night before the family gathering my mother had planned. This would give everyone time to process the information before being face to face, but not enough time for my mother to create a new deception to cover her tracks. At 9:47 p.m., I hit send on the emails and texted my father to check his personal email and expect a letter delivered to his door. I had used a same-day delivery service to ensure the physical letter would arrive that evening. Then came the hardest part: waiting in silence. I turned off my phone, disconnected from email, and sat in my darkened apartment, a glass of bourbon in hand. There was a strange sense of both vindication and terrible anxiety. I had lit the fuse on a family explosion, and there was no predicting exactly how it would unfold. As midnight approached, doubt crept in. Had I gone too far? Was there a less nuclear option I hadn't considered? The $8,000 in lost deposits suddenly seemed insignificant compared to the potential loss of family relationships. But then I remembered the look in my father's eyes during our last fishing trip when he talked about his Alaska dream. I remembered the genuine connection we shared and how someone had been actively working to undermine it. I remembered all the confusing moments over the years that suddenly made sense in light of this new information. No, I decided as I finally lay down to attempt sleep. The truth needed to come out. Whatever happened next, at least it would be based on reality, not the manipulated version of our family my mother had been engineering for years. Little did I know that my phone, silenced and face down on my nightstand, was already lighting up with the first tremors of the earthquake I had triggered. By dawn, the full force of the family explosion would be unleashed, changing all of our lives forever. The sharp trill of my ringtone jolted me awake at 3:17 a.m. I fumbled for my phone in the darkness, my heart racing when I saw Dad on the screen. "Gene," his voice was rough, either from sleep or emotion, I couldn't tell which. "I got your letter. And the emails." I sat up, fully alert now. "Dad, No, let me finish." He took a deep breath. "At first, I didn't believe it. Couldn't believe it. I thought maybe you were exaggerating or misunderstanding something. So I spent the last few hours going through everything. All the evidence. Checking my email settings. Looking at account activity." The silence stretched between us for several seconds. "It's all true, isn't it?" he finally said, his voice breaking slightly. "Karen has been doing this for God knows how long." "I think so, Dad. I'm so sorry." What followed was a 2-hour conversation, unlike any we'd ever had. Dad revealed that he'd had suspicions over the years, but always dismissed them, unwilling to believe that the mother of his children could be so deliberately manipulative. We talked about specific instances we both remembered, connecting dots that had previously seemed unrelated. "The Alaska trip," he said at one point, audible tears in his voice. "You were planning my dream trip." "We can still go," I offered quickly. "I lost some deposits, but we can rebook." "That's not the point, Gene. You put so much thought into it. All those emails I never saw, the friends you contacted," he trailed off. "And she made me believe you were too busy for a simple family dinner." As we talked, my phone beeped with incoming messages. My mother had called 7 times and left a series of voicemails that evolved from confused, "Gene, why is your father calling me at this hour?" to defensive, "I think you've misunderstood some things," to pleading, "Please call me back. We need to talk before things get out of hand." By 5:30 a.m. my sister Lisa called, her voice thick with tears. "What the hell is happening?" she demanded. "Mom's hysterical, Dad's not answering his phone, and I just got an email full of screenshots I don't understand." I explained as calmly as I could, directing her to specific emails that showed how our mother had been manipulating all of us. "That can't be right," Lisa insisted, but I could hear the doubt in her voice. "Mom wouldn't do that." "Read the evidence, Lisa. All of it. Then call me back." By sunrise, my phone was exploding with notifications. Dad had apparently gone straight to my mother's house after our call. According to Lisa, who had rushed over when she couldn't reach either of them by phone, they were having the confrontation of a lifetime. "It's bad, Gene," she reported in a shaky voice. "Really bad. Dad showed up with all your printouts. Mom tried to deny everything at first, then started blaming him for the divorce, then you for invading privacy. Now they're going through years of stuff, not just the birthday thing. Uncle Paul is here too, trying to calm everyone down." The planned family gathering that day transformed into something entirely different. Instead of a birthday celebration, it became a family intervention of sorts. I arrived at my mother's house around noon to find several cars in the driveway, including my Aunt Rachel's and Uncle Paul's. Walking into that house was one of the hardest things I've ever done. The tension was palpable. In the living room, my father sat stone-faced, while my mother's eyes were red and puffy from crying. Lisa sat between them, looking shell-shocked. Aunt Rachel was in the kitchen, mechanically arranging a platter of sandwiches that no one would eat. "Jean," my mother stood when she saw me, her voice surprisingly steady. "I hope you're satisfied with what you've done to this family." Uncle Paul stepped forward. "Corinne, that's enough. We're here to talk honestly, not assign blame." What followed was hours of painful conversation, as years of my mother's manipulations came to light. It wasn't just about me and Dad. Lisa revealed that Mom had told her I had refused to help with her college tuition, completely untrue, while telling me that Lisa hadn't wanted my help. She had told our cousins that Dad forbade her from attending family functions on his side, when in reality, he had always encouraged her to maintain those relationships. As the day wore on, other relatives arrived, having been alerted to the family crisis. Each person seemed to have a story about communication mysteriously gone wrong, plans inexplicably changed, or relationships strained by what now appeared to be my mother's interference. The birthday party food sat uneaten on the dining room table. The carefully wrapped presents remained unopened. Instead of celebration, the house was filled with tears, accusations, and the painful dismantling of decades of deception. "I just wanted to be important to all of you," my mother said at one point, her defiance crumbling into something more vulnerable. After the divorce, everyone took Thomas's side. My own children preferred being with him. "That's not true, Mom," Lisa argued. "But you pushed us away with this controlling behavior." "I was protecting this family," Mom insisted, but her conviction seemed to waver as relative after relative recounted instances of her manipulation. My Aunt Rachel, her own sister, delivered perhaps the most revealing insight of the day. "Corinne has always been like this, even as a child," she said quietly. "She would tell me our parents had forbidden me from borrowing her things, then tell them I had taken items without asking. She needed to be the gatekeeper, the one controlling all the relationships." I sat in a corner of the room, feeling simultaneously vindicated and horrified. I had known the truth needed to come out, but witnessing the full extent of the family rupture was overwhelming. This wasn't just about a canceled trip or a ruined birthday. This was about a fundamental breach of trust that had shaped our family dynamics for decades. As the confrontation continued, I found myself withdrawing emotionally, watching the scene as if from a distance. I had lit the match, but the resulting fire was consuming more than I had anticipated. Despite knowing I had done the right thing, I couldn't help feeling a profound sense of loss as I watched my family structure crumble before my eyes. By evening, people began to leave, emotionally exhausted. My mother had retreated to her bedroom, refusing to continue the conversation. Dad sat alone on the back porch, staring into the distance. Lisa was crying quietly in the kitchen, while Aunt Rachel tried to comfort her. As I prepared to leave, Uncle Paul pulled me aside. "You did the right thing, Jean," he said firmly. "This has been going on too long, and it needed to stop. But healing from this, if it's even possible, will take time." I nodded, unable to find words adequate to the situation. I had exposed the truth, but at what cost? The family I knew, dysfunctional as it might have been, was gone forever. What would rise from its ashes remained to be seen. 3 days after the family confrontation, I heard a knock at my apartment door around 9 p.m. I opened it to find my father standing there, an overnight bag in hand and exhaustion etched into his face. "Dad," I said, surprised. "Come in. Hope it's okay," he said, stepping inside. "I couldn't stay at my place tonight. Too many thoughts, too many memories." I took his bag and led him to the living room, where he sank into my couch with a heavy sigh. I poured us both a finger of bourbon, and for a few minutes we sat in silence, sipping our drinks. "I owe you an apology," he finally said. "And an explanation." "You don't owe me anything, Dad." He shook his head firmly. "I do. Because I've been letting this happen for years. Not just to you, but to all of us." Over the next several hours, my father revealed truths about my parents' marriage and divorce that rewrote my understanding of our family history. The story I had been told about them, growing apart, was a convenient fiction that barely scratched the surface of reality. "The marriage didn't end because we grew apart," Dad explained, staring into his glass. "It ended because of your mother's constant manipulation. The jealousy, the controlling behavior, the lies she would tell to create conflict between me and my friends or family." He described a relationship that had become increasingly isolated as my mother systematically created discord between my father and anyone close to him. Old friendships mysteriously ended after misunderstandings. Family visits became less frequent, as perceived slights were magnified into major offenses. "I tried for years to make it work," he continued. "Therapy, both couples and individual. Nothing changed. Eventually, I realized I was modeling a terrible relationship for you and Lisa. Leaving seemed like the only option." "Why didn't you ever tell us the truth?" I asked. Dad's expression was pained. "I wanted to protect you both from having to choose sides. And honestly, I was ashamed. Ashamed that I had stayed so long in that dynamic. Ashamed that I couldn't fix it. Ashamed that I had failed to create the family you deserved." As we talked into the night, more pieces of the puzzle fell into place. Dad revealed that my college graduation party, which Mom had allegedly spent weeks planning only to have it ruined by a scheduling conflict with the venue, had actually been deliberately sabotaged by her. She had canceled the original reservation because my paternal grandparents had planned to attend. "She always needed to control the narrative," Dad explained. "To be the victim or the hero, never just a participant." Around midnight, Lisa arrived, having texted that she needed to be part of this conversation. She brought her own revelation about Mom's interference in her relationships. 2 serious boyfriends had mysteriously ended things after private conversations with our mother. One had later admitted that Mom had told him Lisa was still in love with her ex and just using him as a distraction. "I never even had an ex at that point," Lisa said, wiping away tears. "That was my first serious relationship." As the night progressed, we moved from shock and anger to a more complex understanding of our mother's behavior. Dad shared what he knew of her childhood, stories he had heard from Aunt Rachel over the years. Mom had grown up with parents who were emotionally distant, playing favorites among their children and creating an environment where attention and affection were scarce resources to be competed for. "It doesn't excuse what she's done," Dad said carefully, "but it might help explain it. Your mother learned early that the only way to get what she needed was to manipulate situations and people. By the time I met her, those patterns were deeply ingrained." The conversation took a surprising turn when Lisa revealed that several extended family members had contacted her since the confrontation, sharing their own experiences with Mom's manipulation. "Cousin Emma said Mom told her we didn't want her at my wedding because of the family drama she causes," Lisa said incredulously. "I spent months wondering why Emma declined the invitation. She was supposed to be a bridesmaid." Each revelation was like peeling back another layer of a deception, so vast it was difficult to comprehend. How had one person managed to create such elaborate webs of misinformation? How had we all been caught in them for so long? Around 3 a.m., exhausted but somehow lighter, we began to discuss how to move forward. Dad suggested a smaller fishing trip, perhaps to Montana instead of Alaska, as a way for us to reconnect and heal. "Nothing fancy," he said. "Just us, some good fishing, and honest conversation." The next morning, we convened a small family meeting with Uncle Paul and Aunt Rachel joining us at my apartment. These had been the two family members who had always seemed to see through my mother's manipulations, though they had been careful in how they tried to intervene over the years. "Setting boundaries with Karen is essential," Aunt Rachel advised. She looked sad but resolute as she spoke about her sister. "I've been doing it for years, but it's harder for you as her children." Uncle Paul, pragmatic as always, helped us develop a communication strategy that would minimize my mother's ability to control information flow within the family. Group texts, direct verification of any claim made about another person's words or intentions, and regular family gatherings that weren't filtered through my mother would be our new normal. "The hardest part," he warned, "will be sticking to these boundaries when she pushes back." And she will push back. As we mapped out this new approach to family dynamics, I found myself thinking about my mother with a complex mixture of anger, pity, and grief. The mother I thought I knew had never really existed. The relationship I thought we had was built on manipulation and control rather than genuine connection. It was a profound loss, even if what was lost had been largely illusory. Dad seemed to read my thoughts. "Gene," he said quietly during a break in the conversation, "it's okay to mourn the mother you thought you had, the mother you deserve to have. That grief is real and valid." His permission to feel that grief opened something in me, and for the first time since this all began, I allowed myself to cry, not just for the ruined birthday plans or the current family crisis, but for the decades of authentic relationship that had been stolen from all of us through my mother's need for control. As painful as this revelation had been, I began to see that facing the truth offered a chance for something we had never fully experienced as a family. Relationships based on honesty, direct communication, and genuine connection, free from the distortions that had shaped our interactions for as long as I could remember. 2 months after the family explosion, Dad and I stood knee-deep in a crystal-clear Montana stream, fly fishing rods in hand. The sun was just beginning to set behind the mountains, casting long shadows across the water. It wasn't Alaska, but in many ways this simpler trip felt more appropriate for where we were in our journey. "Got one," Dad called out, his rod bending as he skillfully played a rainbow trout. I watched him, noting how much younger he looked than he had in years. There was a lightness to him now, despite everything we had been through. The Montana trip had been booked somewhat impulsively, a more modest but meaningful alternative to the elaborate Alaska adventure. We'd found a small cabin near Bozeman, hired a local guide for a couple of days, and spent the rest of the week exploring streams and rivers on our own. The total cost was less than a quarter of the original trip, but the experience was priceless. Back home, we had all been establishing new boundaries with Mom. Limited contact had been necessary at first, a difficult but essential step in breaking the cycle of manipulation. Dad had been the most firm in this approach, communicating with her only through email and only about practical matters related to their long finalized divorce. Lisa and I had taken a different path, cautiously allowing Mom back into our lives, but with clear boundaries and a new awareness that changed everything about our interactions. We verified everything she told us about other family members, maintained our own direct communications with relatives, and called out manipulative behavior when we recognized it. Family therapy had been suggested early on, and surprisingly, Mom had agreed. The first few sessions were tense and defensive, with Mom alternating between tearful apologies and subtle attempts to position herself as the victim of a family conspiracy. But as weeks passed, small breakthroughs began to occur. "I know I've been controlling," she admitted in one session, a concession that stunned us all. "I was so afraid of losing all of you after the divorce. I thought if I could manage how everyone interacted, I could keep my place in the family." The therapist had gently pointed out how this fear had become a self-fulfilling prophecy, with her controlling behavior creating exactly the distance she had been trying to prevent. Mom had nodded, tears streaming down her face. Understanding the roots of her behavior didn't excuse it, but it helped us process our anger and begin the slow work of rebuilding trust, if such a thing was even possible. My first one-on-one meeting with Mom after everything had been revealed was one of the hardest conversations of my life. We met at a neutral coffee shop, both of us visibly uncomfortable. "I don't expect forgiveness," she said after we had exhausted small talk about the weather in her garden. "But I want you to know I'm working to understand why I did what I did. Not just with the birthday and the trip, but all of it, over all these years." I nodded, unsure what to say. Part of me wanted to forgive her immediately, to return to the comfort of our previous relationship. But another part knew that relationship had been built on manipulation and control, not genuine connection. "It will take time, Mom," I said finally. "I'm willing to try, but this isn't something we can just move past. We need to build something new, something honest." She nodded, and for perhaps the first time, I saw her accept a reality she couldn't control or reshape to her preference. My own journey of healing involved individual therapy, where I worked through the complex emotions of the situation. I had to process not just the recent betrayal, but the realization that many of my childhood memories and family relationships had been influenced by my mother's manipulations. "You're experiencing a form of retroactive grief," my therapist explained. "Mourning the family dynamics you thought you had while coming to terms with what was actually happening." This framework helped me make sense of the profound disorientation I felt. I wasn't just dealing with a recent betrayal. I was reevaluating decades of family history through a new lens. The fishing trip with Dad became a crucial part of our healing process. Away from distractions, with hours of quiet conversation as we cast our lines into the water, we rebuilt our relationship on a foundation of honesty. He shared more about his marriage to my mother, the red flags he had ignored, and his regrets about not protecting Lisa and me more effectively from her manipulative patterns. "I thought by not speaking ill of your mother, I was doing the right thing," he said one evening as we sat by the campfire. "But my silence allowed her to control the narrative. I won't make that mistake again." For my part, I shared how her manipulation had affected my other relationships, creating trust issues that had sabotaged potential connections. "I always have this voice in the back of my head," I admitted, questioning if people are being genuine or if there's some hidden agenda. Dad nodded in understanding. "That's her legacy in both our lives. But we're aware of it now, and that awareness is the first step in breaking the pattern." On our last night in Montana, Dad raised his beer bottle in a toast. "To truth," he said simply, "painful as it may be." I clinked my bottle against his. "To truth." When we returned home, the family dynamics continued to evolve. Mom's progress in therapy was slow but noticeable. She still occasionally slipped into manipulative patterns, but she was more receptive to being called out on them. More importantly, we had all developed better skills for direct communication, reducing her ability to triangulate relationships. 6 months after the original confrontation, we attempted a family gathering with clear ground rules established in advance. It wasn't entirely comfortable, but it was authentic in a way our previous interactions had never been. When tensions arose, they were addressed directly rather than through side conversations or passive-aggressive comments. As I reflect on this journey, I realize that exposing my mother's web of lies was both the most difficult and the most necessary thing I've ever done. The comfortable deception that had structured our family relationships for decades has been replaced by a more challenging, but ultimately more rewarding honesty. The $35,300 trip never happened, but what we gained instead, a chance at authentic connection based on truth, was invaluable. We're still healing, still learning how to relate to each other without the manipulative patterns that shaped our interactions for so long. It's not always easy, and there are days when I miss the simpler comfort of blissful ignorance. But as my dad said on our fishing trip, a painful truth is always better than a comfortable lie. Those words have become a guiding principle for me, not just in family relationships, but in all aspects of life. Have you ever had to choose between a painful truth and a comfortable deception? How did you handle it, and what did you learn from the experience? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe for more real-life experiences. Sharing this video might help someone dealing with family manipulation understand they're not alone. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember, authentic relationships, though sometimes messy and difficult, are always worth fighting for.